Hi, my name is Sean, and my research paper is called How to Save a Penalty Kick Reaction versus Chance. As a soccer player, I have been part of countless penalty shootouts, actually as the kicker, but for my research I want to find out the best method for a goalkeeper to maximize his chances of saving a penalty kick in the game of soccer. My research is a great example of how athletes can use math and science to improve their game. Now for some background on the game. The sport itself has been around for hundreds of years, but a more organized form of the game that we now associate with soccer emerged in England in 1863. As the game increased in its popularity, FIFA was established in 1904 as the governing body of world football, or as we call it, soccer. Now, the penalty shootout is a fairly recent addition to the game, as a way to determine the winner of a game that ends with the score tied, with its first appearance in 1970. The penalty shootout proved to be very important to the game, since before its existence, games that ended in a draw were decided by either a replay of the game or a simple coin toss, which you can tell is very controversial. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the penalty shootout, I'm going to briefly go over the fundamentals. So the goal is 24 feet wide by 8 feet high, which equates to an overall area of 192 square feet. As you can tell by the picture, this is a fairly large area relative to the size of the goalkeeper. This puts a significant advantage on the kicker. So the ball is kicked from 12 yards out from the goal line, and the only restrictions placed on the goalkeeper is that he cannot move off the goal line before the ball is kicked. As for the penalty shootout itself, each team alternates shooting 5 shots on the opposing team's goalkeeper. The winner is decided by which team has more goals after those 5 shots. If the scores are tied, the game goes into sudden death. So out of all of these shots, there's one common factor. Each team's goalkeeper doesn't change throughout the shootout, while both teams rotate the kick taker after every single shot. As a result, the goalkeeper plays a very crucial role in winning games for their team. It is important to note again that because the goal is so large, the odds are heavily placed in the favor of the kicker. Single saves decides games means that even if a goalie were to save 1 out of the 5 shots, he could become the hero and win his team the match. So the aim of my research is to find out the best technique for a goalkeeper to increase his chances of saving a penalty kick. This is especially important for goalkeepers to know, since many of the sport's biggest tournaments, like the FIFA World Cup and the UEFA Champions Leagues, are usually decided on penalty kicks. So for goalkeepers, there are 2 philosophies on the best method of saving a penalty kick. This is in the form of chance versus reaction. Coaches, players, and even analysts have debated between these 2 methods since the creation of the penalty shootout. Now, the first method is chance, which is represented by the Portuguese goalkeeper Ricardo. In this technique, the goalkeeper relies on probability and guesses and moves which way the ball will be kicked before the kick is taken. The idea is that by moving before the shot is taken, the goalkeeper gives himself more time to react to the ball if he were to guess the correct direction of the shot. On the flip side is the reaction method, which is represented by Dutch goalkeeper Tim Krul. This is the most traditional method of approaching the penalty shootout. In this technique, the goalkeeper waits for the ball to be kicked and relies on his reflexes to react to the shot. The idea is that waiting for a ball to be kicked allows the goalkeeper to examine the shot so that he has a high probability of diving in the correct direction of the shot. In order to determine the more effective technique, I examined the success rate of both methods based on historical data and statistics. So I decided to conduct my own research and gathered a sample size of about 170 shots so that I can ensure the highest quality of the data. So for my sample size, I decided to only use data from penalty shootouts of major tournaments at the highest level only. This made my research much more reliable than other studies done on the similar premises. The common problem that I found in many of the other studies is that their sample sizes include penalty shootouts from varying levels of competition. Essentially, these studies would group data they collect from the highest skill level of the game in competitions such as the World Cup, along with the data from lowest level of the game in, let's say, amateur 4th division sides. The problem with grouping these together is that there are way too many variables to safely make a correlation. In these varying levels of the game, there is an extraordinary difference in psychological stress. For example, it is much more stressful to be representing your country than your town. In order to reduce the amount of variables and sort of level the playing field of all of these shots, I only took data from the highest competition, where psychological factors are very similar. It is important to note that all shots down the middle of the goal were omitted from the data. The reason is that out of the 171 shots examined, only one shot was taken down the middle of the goal. Because this happened so infrequently, I was safely able to omit this from the data. For each shot, I collected data based on 3 factors: time, movement, and success. For time, I used slow motion replays and multiple angles to examine when exactly the goalkeeper moves in relation to the shot. This determines which of the 2 methods the goalkeeper used in each case. For movement, I indicated whether or not the goalkeeper actually moved in the correct direction of the shot. For success, it's pretty straightforward, as I recorded whether or not the goalkeeper is successful in saving the shot using the respective method. So going into the results of my research, the data showed some pretty interesting figures. Out of all of my data, the reaction method was used 35% of the time, while the chance method was used 65% of the time. Now going into my first point, the data collected from the chance method was pretty remarkable. Theoretically, if a goalkeeper were to guess which side the ball was to go, he would have a 50% chance of guessing the correct direction, left or right. Well, the stats show that a goalkeeper using the chance method guessed the correct direction of the shot very close to 50% with 49.5%. On the other hand, the reaction method reported a much higher percentage in 76.12%. This number is expected since the whole purpose of reacting to the ball is to increase the likelihood of diving in the correct direction. So if anything, this number should be actually higher. Out of all the shots examined in my research, the success rate for the goalkeeper was around 27.64%, which is very low, but pretty reasonable. This means that a goalkeeper would save about 1 out of every 4 shots. Again, this is expected as the odds are placed heavily in the favor of the shooter since the goal is so big. Now, the success rates of each individual method produce some very interesting numbers. A goalkeeper who were to use the chance method saved the shot about 45% of the time. This means that a goalkeeper using this method will save almost 1 out of every 2 shots. That is pretty remarkable. What this also means is that if a goalkeeper were to guess the correct direction of the shot, there is a high chance that a goalkeeper can actually save the shot. On the other hand, the success rate for the reaction method was alarmingly low, with a 1.49% success rate. This number is extremely low, and it means that a goalkeeper using this method will only save a shot about 1 out of 100 times. These numbers were actually very concerning. For the amount of debate surrounding this topic, these numbers are not competing with each other at all. In the next part of my research, I aim to find an explanation for this anomaly. For the next part of my research, I studied the physics behind the penalty kick. Based on a study published in the Journal of Sports Science, high-speed cameras analyzing penalty kicks during the most recent FIFA World Cup reported that the goalie's average acceleration is 5.26 meters per second squared. The average shot velocity is 30 meters per second, which is about 70 miles per hour. For the goalkeeper's movement, I wanted to determine the amount of time it takes for a goalkeeper to move from the center of the goal to one post, which is about 12 feet. Taking the goalkeeper's acceleration into account, I found that it takes the goalkeeper around 1.18 seconds to reach one side of the goal. For the shot movement, I wanted to determine the amount of time it takes for the ball to travel from the penalty spot to one side of the post. Taking the shot velocity into account, it takes the ball about 0.366 seconds to travel this distance. So what does this tell us about the debate? These numbers actually tell us a lot about why the statistics produced the results the way they did. If a goalkeeper were to use the reaction method and move when the ball is kicked, the goalkeeper will not have enough time to reach the ball. This explains the incredibly low success rate of the reaction method. This means that for a goalie to save a well-placed shot, a goalkeeper actually has to move before the ball is kicked to give himself enough time to reach the ball. As a result, the chance method proves to be the most effective method of saving a penalty kick. Now, what does this mean for goalkeepers? This means that goalkeepers actually must gamble on which side the ball will be kicked beforehand. Like any research, there can always be improvements, but my research in its simplicity provides goalkeepers with actually very reliable and conclusive data. In the future, different studies can actually complement my findings. Since my research concludes that a goalkeeper must essentially gamble on which way the ball will be kicked and move beforehand, future studies can use historical data to help predict which way the ball will go based on subtle cues in the body motion of the kicker. Studies show that even the slightest movement in hip rotation and arm swing can actually hint at the direction of the shot. So in the end, what is the best way for the goalkeeper to save a penalty kick? Historical data and simple physics shows that the best way to save a penalty kick is to use the chance method and dive in one way or the other before the shot is kicked.